Basically, so the way of strategy is a series of tenets that was put forth by the Japanese swordsman Miyamoto Musashi in the late 17th century. And he wrote a book at the end of his life called The Book of Five Rings. He fought over 100 duels, never lost a single one, so he has some shit to say about strategy. Basically, I'm going to go through the main tenets that are presented in one of these books, and all of them are essentially illustrating the same principle, but everyone illuminates a slightly different aspect of that principle. And I'm going to be throwing in some religious references and shit, but I'm not like espousing any kind of religion or anything. I think this is a system that can apply to any sort of philosophical system. Anyway, so he once said the principle of strategy is having one thing to know 10,000 things. So that is how we're going to start. So the first tenet, enact strategy openly, honestly, and truthfully, or alternately, do not think dishonestly. So Jesus once said, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and these things shall be added unto you. So keep that in mind as we go into this. So lots of people feel like their strategy has an advantage when it's enacted behind closed doors, like where outsiders can't see what's going on. And I think that's a terrible approach. So in computer security, for example, if you're a programmer, a lot of people try to make their code more secure by using a process called obfuscation. And what that means is the programmer intentionally makes their code more difficult to understand so that people can't clearly perceive how it functions. In practice, this is a terrible idea and it never works. And people still keep doing it, but it doesn't fucking work. So hackers are a diligent bunch, and they want to hack your shit, and if all you do is make it harder to understand, they'll just figure it out. Like, it's not that hard. So it also makes the program more prone to bugs and other dangerous errors because code that's difficult to understand is also difficult to improve and work on. So techniques that are based on solid, open, understood mathematical principles are always the best way to achieve security. Code that's been viewed by thousands of trained eyes, like in open source projects, is always more secure than code that has only been seen by a few people, which can have bugs and other mistakes that people overlook. And even code that has been seen by thousands of people can have bugs, like with the Heartbleed error. Did y'all hear about that? So yeah, I mean, there are like tens of thousands of people working on that, and still that bug got through. So I think that only magnifies the importance of letting as many people look at code as possible, and I think that's an illustration of this principle. When you act honestly, things will take care of themselves. You don't have to worry about it. So, the second principle, the way is in training. So there was a Greek teacher of mathematics, Euclid. He wrote a book on geometry called The Elements, and it was used as a mathematics textbook for a really fucking long time. Like, people still use it today. It was written in 600 BC. He was the mathematics teacher of King Ptolemy of Greece, and he was having a hard time learning geometry, and he asked if there's an easier way to learn geometry than through reading the elements, and Euclid said, there's no royal road to geometry. So, everything requires training. There's no royal road to music, there's no royal road to learning how to play basketball, you just have to fucking sit down and do it. Everything's tough at first. So, what this also means is that understanding is really, it's a personal thing. It's different for every individual. You're not likely to understand something just by hearing someone else explain it. You have to experience it. So through training, we cultivate individual understanding of what we practice, and we learn to apply it intuitively. So when we have a true understanding, we're able to apply what we have learned in many different circumstances. Become acquainted with every art. In strategy, personal preferences can be your downfall. Musashi also wrote, it's bad for commanders and troopers to have likes and dislikes. So basically, when you're in this contest of strategy, players tend to fall into predictable schemes and patterns which the enemy learns to exploit to their advantage. So in fighting games, if any of you all watch fighting tournaments or anything, they call this getting downloaded. When your enemy downloads you, they just completely understand how you fight and they're able to destroy you completely. If you have no preferences strategically, then the enemy can never be quite sure what to expect, and that's a huge advantage. So if you want to be a master of strategy, you have to understand this. Musashi also wrote, once you've perceived the way, you will see it in everything. And what that also means is that if you don't see the way in everything, then you've not perceived the way. And the only way to learn that is to practice many, many different arts. Know the ways of all professions. Pretty similar. Robert Heinlein, anybody? So he wrote this: a human being should be able to change a diaper, plan an invasion, butcher a hog, con a ship, design a building, write a sonnet, balance accounts, build a wall, set a bone, comfort the dying, take orders, give orders, act alone, solve equations, analyze a new problem, pitch manure, program a computer, cook a tasty meal, fight efficiently, die gallantly. Specialization is for insects. So, as humans, we have the special ability to learn whatever we feel like learning. So an ant or a bee can't ever be more than a worker or a drone or a queen because their biology restricts them to a certain set of actions they have the ability to perform. But we don't have that problem. So we should study everything. Distinguish between gain and loss in worldly matters. Have any of you heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect? No. So basically, people who are bad at things think that they're really good at things because they have no ability to perceive how bad they are at that thing. The technical definition is unskilled individuals suffer from illusory superiority, mistakenly rating their ability much higher than is accurate. This bias is attributed to a metacognitive ability of the unskilled to recognize their ineptitude. What that means, if you can't distinguish properly between winning and losing, gain and loss, you'll be completely unable to determine if you have an effective strategy at all. And not only that, you won't even know that you're unable to determine if you have an effective strategy. So that's a really bad position to be in. And you have to cultivate this discernment through... Thank you, yes. Develop intuitive judgment and understanding for everything. In the field of artificial intelligence, there's a concept called heuristics. When you're writing an AI to play a board game like chess, it's really important to have some sort of metric to determine if, so the computer can look at the state of the game and quantitatively evaluate the strength of its position. So it's really difficult to do this generally, especially with more strategic, complicated games like Go. But human strategists who are skilled at these kinds of games have the unique ability to intuitively evaluate the strength or weakness of a particular board configuration. So it's possible to train computers to be good at one thing. Computers exist that can defeat grandmasters at chess. But that same computer that was programmed to play chess probably couldn't defeat the same grandmaster at like chutes and ladders or something. So humans have this ability to develop an intuition for everything. In many myths, like in martial arts movies, you see one of the tests or skills of tests of training or skill is that the student confronts a challenge while blindfolded, so that way they can only confront their opponent or the challenge through their intuitive judgment, and they have to be ready for everything. So mastering that is essential to strategy. Perceive those things which cannot be seen. I'm almost done. I play a lot of Dota. Anybody? Dota? Yeah. So game strategy has a lot to do with vision, like what you see and what you can't see at any given point of the game. So when you've played enough games of Dota, you might notice you start to develop a sort of sixth sense, like you know where the enemy is, even though you can't really see them. And so that sort of intuition can be the difference between winning and losing. So you might be familiar with the phrase reading between the lines. So that means something that is unsaid or unseen can often be as important or more important than the things which are readily apparent. So look not at what you see, but look at what it took to produce what you see. Pay attention even to trifles. Anybody been watching Cosmos lately? Neil deGrasse Tyson? Yeah. So he writes a lot of cool stuff, and if you think that he's not a philosopher, he's anti-philosophy, I've been seeing this all over the internet, you're wrong, he's a philosopher. The cosmic perspective enables us to grasp, in the same thought, the large and the small. That's Neil deGrasse Tyson. So when we say pay attention to trifles, what we're really saying is that the largest things, like the biggest principles, are bound up with the smallest principles. So perceiving the small enables us to grasp what is broad and large as well. Finally, do nothing which is of no use. In chess, if you make a useless move, you're giving your opponent an advantage, and it can lead to the loss of many pieces. Each player has one move per turn. Wasting a turn can allow your opponent to make useful moves to your disadvantage. One principle in chess that you shouldn't move a piece twice in the first 10 moves. So what that means is your piece often goes too far into enemy territory, you open it up to attack, and then you're forced to retreat in order to save the piece. And while you're wasting your moves, retracing your steps, your opponent has time to develop their position more strongly. So don't do anything which is of no use. Moving your piece and having to move it back later when you think ahead, that's accomplishing nothing. So you shouldn't do it. So that's pretty much it. If you want to understand the way of strategy, you got to practice it all the time. It exists in literally everything in the world. And if you practice it all the time, then your spirit will naturally broaden. Thanks.